Although this card looks like a scene from a fairy tale, it is actually based on a real person and a real location. Stay tuned to learn the behind-the-scenes story of this charming card. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we'll be learning the tarot deck one card at a time. Today's video is about the Six of Cups. This video will begin with a short description of the card. Next, I'll briefly explain what the card means when it appears in a reading. Then we'll talk about what each element symbolizes and what the card means when it shows up in both the upright and reversed position in a reading. I'll share some examples from my life so you can relate the card to a real-world situation. And stay tuned until the end and I'll give you several questions to help you connect with the card. I will be using the Rider-Waite Tarot in this video. You'll find the link to the deck below, as well as to the many books I've used in my research. So let's get started. The Six of Cups is a very unusual card that looks like a scene from a fairy tale. There is a boy and a girl pictured in this card. We have a much larger boy wearing a red cap, blue tunic, red tights, and brown boots. He is facing a girl who is wearing an orange head covering, yellow dress, blue skirt, red shoes, and a white mitten on her left hand. In a moment, I'll explain why I think this is an older woman with a younger man rather than children. Much of the card is yellow and the sky is blue. Behind the boy, we see a gray podium with a shield that has an X shape through it. The six cups in this card are not being used for drinking, but as flower vases that contain white flowers. On the left side of the card is a guard. When this card appears in a reading, it represents generosity and happy memories from your past. It's not surprising that, following the anguish of the Five of Cups, you would long for simpler times with less responsibility or loss. The Six of Cups can represent acts of kindness or charity, reconciling with old friends, or a baby or child. Now let's talk about the symbolism in this card. This is a very unusual card that looks like a scene from a fairy tale. Hopefully by the time you've watched this video, you'll be convinced that this scene is based on real people and a real place. First, let's talk about the setting. According to Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin, in their wonderful book Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, this card is based on a real person and a real location in the courtyard of Small Hythe Palace in England. Pamela Colman Smith, the illustrator of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, actually stayed here. I could not find any royalty-free photos of Small Hythe Palace or the courtyard, but there's lots available online. I've put a link in the comments so you can check them out yourself. You can also see photos in the book Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot deck. And these are of a museum in England where you can visit and actually see the courtyard and the location for yourself. The building and courtyard definitely look like the one pictured on the card. Katz and Goodwin believe that this couple is based on a play called Nance Oldfield that starred an actress called Ellen Terry, who eventually purchased the property and was one of Pamela Colman Smith's dearest friends. This play is based on a real-life actress named Anne Oldfield and is the story of a young poet who falls for a much older actress. The girl on the card is believed to be Ellen Terry in her role as Anne Oldfield. Anne Oldfield was famously buried wearing white gloves. This would explain what looks like a mitten on the girl's left hand. On the screen, you can see an image that Pamela Colman Smith painted of Ellen Terry in this role. Look at the kerchief and the blonde, wavy hair that looks like the girl in the card. Here's another painting by Pamela Colman Smith that also shows Ellen Terry. There's a lot of similarities. So let's talk about the boy and girl in the card. The figures on the card are definitely unusual. Most authors say that they are a much larger young boy and girl playing dress-up. However, I think that the girl can be viewed as an old woman. I am sticking to the story I just mentioned, that the boy and girl pictured are based on the play Nance Oldfield, about a poet that falls in love with an older woman. The man is wearing a red cap, blue tunic, red tights, and brown boots. Some authors say that he is dressed like a jester. Jesters were often storytellers, so I don't think it's much of a stretch to believe he is the poet referenced in the play. In tarot, red is about love and passion, so this is reflected in his cap and tights. The blue tunic represents intuition and emotion, and the brown shoes represent being grounded and knowing what you want. The woman is wearing an orange headscarf. Orange can represent happy memories. Her yellow dress can represent happiness as well. Like the young man, her blue skirt represents intuition and emotion, and the red shoes can represent passion. Much of this card is yellow, which denotes happiness. Behind the boy, we see a gray podium with a shield that has an X shape through it. This is the shape of the Saltire cross, or St. Andrew's cross, which is the cross you see on the Scottish flag. This is the story behind the Saltire cross, and you can see an image on the screen that was painted by Mattia Preti in the 1600s. When St. Andrew, who was one of the apostles, was crucified by the Romans in 60 AD, he did not believe that he was worthy of being crucified on a cross like Jesus. So he was crucified on this X-shaped cross. The cross symbolizes the relationship between heaven and earth, as well as relationships in general. There are 6 cups in this card. They are not being used for drinking, but as flower vases. Flowers are symbolic of love, and the white flowers represent purity. Liz Dean, in her book The Ultimate Guide to Tarot, speculates that the heart-shaped blooms may be the white datura flowers. You can see images on the screen. They can be used in herbal potions as an aphrodisiac, poison, or hallucinogen. This makes me wonder if what we are seeing is intended to be real or a hallucination about the past. On the left side of the card is a guard who is protecting the young couple. The sky is blue. This represents happiness, imagination, and clarity. There are no clouds in the sky to obscure their feelings. When the 6 of Cups appears in an upright position in a reading, it can symbolize that you are remembering happy memories from childhood or connecting with the innocence of childhood. It can symbolize that you are nostalgic for simpler times. It can mean that you are reconnecting with people from your past, such as a childhood sweetheart. The 6 of Cups can be about dating someone or reconciling with someone after a fight or estrangement. It can be about kindness and might be about giving or receiving a gift. It could mean that you are reconnecting with a childhood hobby or interest. The 6 of Cups might be a reminder to be more playful and childlike. It can also represent that you are having a child. Finally, it could signify a trip home. Here is an example from my life about reconnecting with a childhood hobby or interest. As a child, I always wanted to learn to draw. However, I never did because I did not have a lot of self-confidence. I knew that if I took art in high school, my work would be displayed at the annual open house for all to see. And the thought of having people view my work was way too scary for me to consider. Regardless, the desire to learn to draw never left me. When my son was 6, he started taking group art lessons from a lady who worked out of her home. I decided that I was going to put on my big girl panties and ask the teacher if I could take lessons with her class of 6 to 12-year-olds. She said yes, and I loved it. I was also terrible. When we had our first art show, you could not tell who were the 6-year-olds and who was the 40-year-old. Regardless, I kept at it and took lessons on and off for the next 15 years. You could not describe me as having any natural talent. Nevertheless, it gave me great joy to reconnect with a childhood interest. When the 6 of Cups appears in a reversed position, it can signify that you are clinging to the past, that you are immature. It is time for you to stop acting like a child and grow up, that you have lost your innocence. The reverse 6 of Cups can mean that you have painful childhood memories, that you are over-idealizing your childhood or your past, that you have a difficult relationship with your child or your child refuses to grow up, and finally, that it is time to start living in the present and looking to the future. Here's an example of the reversed 6 of Cups from my life about over-idealizing the past. I grew up in Canada and went to a university named after Egerton Ryerson. He was a Methodist minister and chief superintendent of education from 1844 to 1876. You can see an image of him on the screen that was painted by Theophil Hamel. Until a few years ago, I believed that Ryerson was a Canadian hero for creating a network of public schools and being a pioneer in education. He sought to create what he called common schools as a, quote, charming passage in which students were inspired towards lifelong learning and growth, unquote. I believed what I was told when I attended university in the late 70s and early 80s and never questioned it. Well, it was true that he did propose common schools, but he was also the architect of residential schools for Indigenous children where they were abused, had their culture taken away, and were worked pretty much to death. He had equally awful ideas about education for children who were blind and deaf, Black students, and children who were considered vagrant and neglected. There's a link to an article about him in the comments if you'd like to learn more. The result was that the university was renamed in 2022 and is now called Toronto Metropolitan University. It is a sad example of how the good was idealized and the terrible was overlooked. Here are some questions to help you connect with the Six of Cups. Number 1, what are some memories of your childhood that warm your heart? Number 2, do you feel like you've idealized the past? Number 3, are you spending too much time thinking about the past rather than focusing on the present or the future? Number 4, are there things from your past that are no longer serving you? In other words, are there areas in your life where you need to grow up? And number 5, is there a childhood interest or activity that you would like to start doing again? Or is there something that you wished you had done as a child that you could start doing? And number 6, are there people from your childhood that you'd like to reconnect with? And finally, number 7, are there ways that you can be more kind? So I hope that this video has given you a good look into the Six of Cups. And please join me for the next video, which is the Seven of Cups.